Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Deathnote Part 1, Episode 16, Decision. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of exactly what happens within this episode. So we start with Light kind of out in the woods, where he gives up the second notebook, giving it back to Rem, who flies off with it, following orders that we aren't really let in on as an audience. We then find out from Light that he has buried his notebook in the forest, and he's letting Ryuk know that the next time he says to get rid of it, regardless of context, he means he's giving up the Death Note. He then makes his way to where the task force is in order to turn himself in. Before Light arrives at the task force, Misa has undergone a personality change of sorts where she now thinks, due to the gaps in her memories, that Elle is a stalker who has kidnapped her because she's an idol and is just being a little bit kinky with keeping her hostage, which is confusing everybody in the task force because obviously this is new from where she was at before she lost unconsciousness, like she lost consciousness, and now that since she's woken up, she now thinks they're stalkers. Anyways, Light arrives and basically says, you know what, I'm not saying I'm Kira, but I could be Kira. So in order to test the theory, lock me up, and when the killings resume while I'm locked up, that'll prove I'm not, or if they never start up again, that'll prove I am. And Light argues with his father a bit about it, but ultimately L does his analysis and weighs the pros and cons and decides to give Light what he wants, and he does end up allowing Light to be arrested by the task force members and detained, and he's also put into a cell with a camera on him. And we then get kind of... Okay, so wait. Before the montage, we have Soichiro basically very angry at L for allowing Light to be arrested and detained, and L says that he knows that Soichiro, if Light was proven to be Kira, would kill him and then kill himself. And so when Soichiro asks to be detained as well, L allows it, though tells him to keep his phone on him, and he's put into a third cell. We then see day 1, where we have Light and Ryuk in the prison cell. Then we see day 3, and so on and so forth. And we learn from L's side of things that the killings have stopped. However, 15 days later, Matsuda runs in super excited, lets Soichiro know that the killings have resumed, and then he goes to tell Light. L stops him because Light's been acting a bit differently. He's been acting a bit differently since he gave up the Death Note while Ryuk was having his withdrawal symptoms from apples. Light said that he's going to get rid of his pride, and since he said, I'll get rid of it, that was Ryuk's cue. Ryuk leaves. Light loses his memories. He remembers asking to be imprisoned and remembers why he was a suspect, but he doesn't remember being Kira, so now his personality also has drastically changed, which is just even more suspicious. And L doesn't really know what to make of it, which is why he stops Matsuda from telling Light that that the killings have resumed. And that's where we leave this episode. Which means that it's now time to start our rankings for this episode. As always, we rank on our 2 lists, the mostly objective list, which is without emotion, and then the personal list, which is all emotion. So, as always, we will start with our mostly objective rank values, and the first value that applies is worth 3 points, which is our multi-arc supporting character development, which is where we learn that Misa, without her memory, thinks that Elle is a stalker and doesn't even remember getting arrested because that was directly linked to her being the second Kira, which she now has no memory of being. And then the second multi-arc supporting character development is Soichiro following Light's footsteps and asking to be detained so he doesn't commit murder on his son and kill himself, apparently, because that's something that he would risk doing, and everybody else seems to acknowledge that that is the facts and be totally okay with it. But anyways, that's 3 points. We then have our multi-arc main character development, which is Light asking to be imprisoned while claiming that, he might be Kira, he just doesn't know that he's Kira. After he's made up his plans to give up the notebook after burying it, and then when he gives up the note, and then the second, okay, so that's the first piece. Second piece of that is he does give up the notebook and he does lose his memory within this episode. And I am going to count it separately because obviously both are really big developments. One is him being imprisoned, huge, and then him losing his memory, also huge. So that's 4 times 2. We then have a little bit of world building where we learn that if somebody owns more than one notebook and gives up one of them, his memories will remain intact and unaffected until he gives up all of the notebooks in his possession, which is new. And that brings us to 15. However, there was one negative in my opinion, and that was a character regression for Light. Frankly speaking, his personality does a complete 180 when he gives up his memories, understandably. But like he still has the memory of being the one to suggest being imprisoned. And he still has the memory of why he was a suspect. So why does he think begging is going to get him released? Like I know like your memories of actually being Kira have gone, but your reasons for being imprisoned haven't actually changed and you're still aware of them. So I just felt like it was a bit of a backstep for the character. Overall, kind of felt a little bit secondhand embarrassed for him, to be honest. But that was only a -1, so that still leaves us with 14 points. Maximum score is 10, so that makes this a 10 out of 10 episode. And so our part 1 rankings so far in our mostly objective ranking list is in first place Rebirth, Confrontation, Doubt, Wager. This episode Decision falls into 5th place, and it is 5th because on the mostly objective ranking, anytime that an episode shares a score with another episode, it's ranked in the episode airing order, which makes this 5th. And then we have Encounter in 6th, Confessions, Tactics, Friend, Pursuit, Glare, Unraveling, Love, Dealings, Assault, and Overcast in 16th place. All right, so now it's time for the personal rankings. And I think Rook was the star of this episode. I really enjoyed the scenes, few though they were, that he was in. I particularly liked the fact that it was only once he was in the cell, sitting next to Light, that he realized he's not going to be able to eat apples while he's imprisoned. I thought that was hilarious, how he's kind of sitting there and being like, wait, does this mean I can't eat apples? Greatest moment of the episode, in my opinion. Obviously, then he does his withdrawals where he was getting all twisty, but it was like as soon as Light said he'll get rid of it, it was literally they showed like a shock line going through Ryuk, and he just like completely goes out of the withdrawals, gets up and just wanders off. Ryuk is one of my favorite characters. So, loved those moments. L is L. Again, one of my favorite characters of the show, and he basically spent this episode thinking a lot. particularly about, why Light is allowing himself to be imprisoned, how that could implicate him for being Kira versus not being Kira, how it's a not quite Kira thing to do, knowing that Light probably had some sort of plan, so on and so forth. A lot of internal speculation was happening with Elle. Misa, of course, going for the thinking that he's a stalker now was a twist. That was the first time she did that. And honestly, the fact that she implied that there have been many stalkers in the past and that he's gone the farthest among her stalkers is concerning. Just that she's had so many stalkers in the past that her immediate thought is, I've been kidnapped by a stalker and let me give you an autograph. Or I'll even kiss your forehead or something like that to try to get him to let her go. I did think that was funny. I didn't quite like the fact that Soichiro is literally saying, I will kill my family member and then myself if my family member turns out to be Kira. At the same time, I think that's just a cultural difference because everybody else seemed to be totally okay with it. And then I genuinely do not think that Light had any clue at all how different he was as Kira versus Light before the notebook. Because I feel like the number one biggest flaw in this plan of his was the complete and total 180 that his personality did the moment he gave up the notebook. Because he still maintained the knowledge of knowing that he was the one who suggested he be imprisoned. He retained the knowledge of why he was a suspect. Those things he still retained, so you would think he would be able to keep his composure. You would think it. But he did not at all keep his composure. He lost his mind. He started begging. He started being completely uncomposed and completely different than he was before, which completely gave away the fact that something happened, something changed, especially when you kind of put that alongside Misa's sudden change. He's just increased suspicion on himself, though once the killings do resume after 15 days, Matsuda then informs Soichiro, and L confirms that Light is now back to a gray area, so he's not definitely guilty, but he's also not innocent. And again, he does, before the episode end, stop Matsuda from telling Light the good news about the killings continuing and actually straight up lies to Light and says no killings have continued, while Light, once again, is like, believe me, it's an error. I could never be Kira. I'm definitely not Kira. And he's all wide-eyed and panicked, and it's like, this is not the composure we have come to expect of Light. And I think even as an audience member, I was shocked by how much he had changed because I don't think I noticed either how different. I mean, he does have wild personality swings on occasion. I mean, the first time he killed someone, he went from like absolute despair that he was a murderer to I could be a god in like 2 seconds. So he does have a history of rapid personality changes. But in this case, rather than rapid changing to something cooler, he went kind of uncool in an instant. And like I said, very uncomposed. But that in itself was amusing. So, anyways, like I said, strong episode. Not my favorite. Not one of the best, but still up there. And so I gave it a 7 out of 10, which brings our part 1 ranking so far on the personal ranking to in first place, Rebirth. Encounter, Glare, Confessions, Doubt, Pursuit. This episode comes in 7th with Decision, then Confrontation, Tactics, Dealings, Friend, Love, Overcast, Wager, Unraveling, and my least favorite so far, Assault in 16th. And that now brings us to our series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking for part 1, we currently have a score of 120 out of 260. And on the personal side, we have a score of 94 out of 260 so far. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Death Note Part 1, Episode 16, Decision. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.